With our first speech today, I'd like to welcome the project from the Effective Coaching Manual, an evaluation and feedback project. Our first speaker today helps people going through or wanting to go through a life transition to discover and start living their authentic selves. With a speech titled Boundaries, What Are They? Please welcome life coach and performance artist, Leonard Shostak, also known as Hardy Brooklyn.
Thank you, Eric. I'm not as tall as that. So I'm going to start today. Welcome, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow SEC Rough Riders, and most welcome guests. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about boundaries. And the reason why I chose that topic is, for this whole month, I've been coaching people around boundaries. And I gave a workshop this week. And one thing that really started interested me was the topic that came up is, what is a boundary? And I'd like to throw that out there. Anybody have a clue of what a boundary is? Anybody want to respond, locally or remotely?
A line you should not cross.
A line you should not cross. And when we look at boundaries in coaching and life, we look at boundaries from the point of view of something similar to that, except a boundary is something that you put upon yourself. Because when you're working and you're putting yourself in different situations, you need to think about what is going to be best for the relationship and what are you going to be comfortable with having other people do to me, around me, near me, or for me. A great example of a boundary that my partner has is, she will not ride a bicycle with me. There's not a chance that she's going to go in Midtown. She might ride a bicycle with me when we're in a state park, but a hard boundary is, she's not going to be around me when I'm riding my bicycle. So on date night, if I go out and say, hey, hon, trains are delayed, traffic's crazy, why don't we just take a city bike home? I know that the rest of my evening is not going to go positively, because that's a boundary that she set. So me bringing up something that instills other things is going to cause her to instigate that boundary and say, hey, you violated my boundary, so I am not going to be around you or participate in activities with you. And through the workshop, we continue with different examples. And one thing that I found interesting is most people approach boundaries from a point of view of negativity. And I don't look at it that way. I try to think of things that are going to help me improve my relationship, help me improve my excitement, and help improve other people's excitement. So as a coach, I try to ask my clients, when you're setting a boundary with someone, think deep and hard about what you are going to be okay with them doing around you, with you, and to you. So like my wife has that hard boundary, no bike riding. That's a hard boundary, and that's very easily, and it was communicated. I can come up with a million reasons why she should violate that boundary. But the most important thing I try to tell people is, if she can rephrase that boundary in a more positive way, it helps a lot. And by that, what I'm saying is, instead of saying, I don't like it, it's dangerous, and putting all those negative connotations around it when she's stating her boundary, rephrase that boundary and say, hey, hon, do you know that when you bicycle ride in the city, it brings back visions of XYZ in my life that makes me nervous, makes me uncomfortable. That's a trigger to me. Now I'm looking at what she's saying. Instead of she's putting the negativity on me, she's telling me how I am affecting her and how I can change my behavior in a positive way to move forward. Instead of me thinking about, man, she's so pissed at me, she just doesn't like riding with me because I ride fast and dangerous and reckless. Now I understand where she's coming from. Even though with boundaries, you should never have to justify, never have to make excuses. But sometimes when you're with people, if you can express the boundary in a positive manner, it will help people understand the boundaries and respect them a lot better. I'm working with somebody that always approaches boundaries right now from a negative angle. These persons are doing this, they're making me mad, they're making me that. And I sit back and I say, well, when they're doing that, who's going to die? And a good example is, This person hates traveling with people that are not always in a super rush. They're not the first on the plane, they're first off the plane. So when I sit down with her and I say, she's like, I can never travel with people like that. I'm like, how do we rephrase that from a more positive manner? How do we rephrase that statement? Because nobody's gonna die if you're the 10th person off the plane as opposed to the first. It might make you anxious. It might make you worry that you're gonna miss your next flight, but it's not gonna kill anyone, and it's not gonna cause physical or mental harm to you. And by the time we were done working it out, she was able to rephrase that question so that when she's thinking about who she wants to travel with, she can ask them questions to disqualify them if they're going to be violating her boundaries. Have you traveled before? What's your boarding priority? How close do you schedule your flights? How much time do you like to spend in the airport? So where she was able to turn that around instead of being like, I don't do this, to let me see what these people do, and let me see if there's little things that will allow them to, me give consent for them to violate my boundary. So this person might be great for them, they might travel great, but they really don't care about rushing in and out of the airport. So maybe she has a conversation with them and says, why don't we meet after you're done with the airport, instead of just not traveling with them. So while communicating with people, I try to help them ask questions of themselves and others to understand how my boundaries, how I can give a little, or how I can change my approach to the individual. So on date night, for my example is, if there's a ton of traffic, what do? And I don't want to sit on the subway with her because the delays or sit in the car. I get on the city bike and I go meet her at home. And I'll be like, well, I'll get home first. I'll prepare the room. Maybe I'll make you some dessert or coffee or cappuccino or whatever it is. And I make it a pleasant environment for her to get home, because why should my anxiety cause somebody else stress? So I found a solution around that boundary to be able to move forward in a positive manner. So I ask all of you, when you're thinking about a boundary or you're thinking about somebody that's interacting with you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, think about how you can turn that into a positive conversation so that moving forward in life, it's not all about negativity, and it's about moving forward to better our communication, better our relationships, and better our understanding for each other and what the limits are on them, and that they are going to be putting on us. So I'd like everybody to do one takeaway and try to define one of your boundaries that you have in a more positive manner moving forward, so that when you convey it to other people, it brings them in instead of pushing them away. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow SCC representative, and most welcome guests.